There are sometimes times in life where you have an action, then you have a reaction, and the two come together. And this is the case from the aftermath of what happened this past week. The Baltimore Ravens have placed the franchise tag on Justin Madubuike, causing a $22.1 million hit, putting the Ravens in a deficit. And this is not to say that the Ravens will not work out a long-term deal before the March 13th deadline, before the new league year begins. But unenviably, Eric DeCosta, you have a lot of work to do. Now, can the Ravens grab lightning in a bottle? Will lightning strike twice in the same place at the same time? This time last year, the Baltimore Ravens placed the non-exclusive tag on Lamar Jackson, and they did the same thing this season with Justin Madubuike. This does mean that other teams, if they so choose, they can go out and try to acquire Justin Madubuike for 2 first-round picks. And with some teams throughout the NFL, first-round picks do not mean much, especially if you covet a player that may be the best defensive tackle in the NFL. Now, I know that the Ravens have a commitment issue recently. They do not like keeping players that they drafted once they become big ticket items. Once they become big money players, the Ravens kind of wash their hands of them. But at some time, you do have to keep the talent around you. Is $22.1 million worth keeping a defensive tackle on the team? Is possibly breaking up the core of what the Ravens have going, which got them to the AFC Championship, worth it for one player? Now, I know a lot of people are going to say we need that production, which undoubtedly we do, but at what cost? So today in this video, we are going to talk about some of the things that the Ravens can do to get under the salary cap, to have a little bit of money to spend to pay for their own free agents and possibly bring in some more, because the Ravens have holes everywhere, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So in the comments section, let me know, do you think that franchise tagging Justin Madubuike was the right move, or should the Ravens have let him walk and possibly focused on other positions, mainly the offensive line? Because there is no way the Ravens can go into next season with the offensive line the way that it is constructed now. And we will get into that later. Some of the moves that could be made, some of the moves that should be made, some of the moves that can't be made because we don't have any other viable options waiting in the background. And that's on you, EDC, for not drafting properly or thinking ahead. Justin Madubuike, with his team-leading 13 sacks and numerous pressures, led the Baltimore Ravens to the #1 scoring defense overall in the NFL. Outside of per se Aaron Donald, Madubuike was the best defensive tackle in the NFL last season. And with the NFL not trying to collude against him, will there be other teams that are going to take a chance and swipe him away? Now, while keeping Madubuike in Baltimore for another season is extremely good news for this defense, especially with the overhaul from the defensive coaches and possible free agent departures, there is a downside to this, not including Nelson Agholor re-signing with the Ravens, whose contract we are still unclear about over 2 weeks later. We don't know how much he's going to eat up from the cap. With Madubuike being signed, the franchise tag is worth $22.1 million. That being said, the Ravens are currently negative $9.5 million over the cap. So now the Ravens have less than a week. They have to, by 4 p.m. on March 13th, be under the salary cap or be penalized. So the Ravens have to construct a myriad of moves, a myriad of moving pieces to get this team under the cap to just sign Justin Madubuike. Now, while it's all well and good that we bring him back and hopefully he keeps ascending as a pass rusher, but even with us making moves, we still have other free agents to sign. Currently, the Ravens have over 24 pending free agents as we speak. So that leaves a lot of holes that need to be filled. And being $9 million over the cap does not help. But luckily, there are some moves that can help create Baltimore tens of millions of dollars in cap relief. There are just some hard moves that need to be made by Eric DeCosta going forward. Now, what would potentially help the Ravens is if Eric DeCosta's draft picks could contribute to the team before year 3 or year 4. This is one of the things that help put us in a deficit to begin with. Better drafting means we need less free agents to sign, which means less void years, which means less cap being spent on players, compensating for the Ravens not hitting on draft picks. So this upcoming draft is going to be critical for the upcoming success of the Baltimore Ravens heading into 2024. Let's look at some of the moves that can help potentially get the Ravens some breathing room where it pertains to the salary cap. The first move, which I think is possibly inevitable, would be to cut Tyus Bowser. We really don't know what went on last season with Bowser. Just know that he got injured away from football, and he and the Ravens had some sort of butting of heads, and he did not return for the season. They thought he would be back by week 4. He never played. So releasing Tyus Bowser would free up $5.5 million in cap room. Even though, more importantly, Bowser and his play would tremendously help the Ravens, because I think he is one of the better all-around performers. He can rush the passer, he can drop back in coverage, he can stuff the run. So if Bowser and the Ravens mend fences, is it worth the $5.5 million in savings to keep him around? I don't know. The next one is something to me that should be inevitable: making Odell Beckham Jr. a post-June 1st cut. That would save $1.2 million. Now, I just saw something online that said we could possibly re-sign Odell for $11.9 million. Don't know why we would do that, especially if we would cut him to save $1 million, to bring him back on an $11 million contract after a 500-yard year where he lost playing time in most games. To me, I think we should just cut our losses, thank him for the time well spent, if you consider it well spent, and send him on his merry way. Now we start getting into the harder cuts, some of the pieces that we possibly need to keep moving forward, but that cap relief could be just too great. First and foremost, for me, this is a long time coming. The Ravens should have never, in my personal opinion, re-signed Hard R. Ricard, and cutting him would save $4 million. Now, there have been reports stating that we could sign him to an extension, but why would we do that? Because now we're just pushing dead money possibly down the road if we don't foresee him in our long-term plans in this offense. Now, to me, you can sign any fullback, you can sign any tight end H-back combination to do what he does for a lot less money. And right now, the Ravens need every penny that they can to construct this team. So to me, this seems to be the most obvious move. And I know people are going to hail his blocking, say he's a character guy and all these things, but $4 million for a fullback that we really don't heavily utilize. We could put that money into getting an offensive lineman. Therefore, we don't need Ricard in the chip block or help out, because we have offensive linemen that can actually do their job. So to me, Ricard, gone. Now we move on to our tackles. And to me, at first I was like, this is a tough one, being that we are already without 2 starting guards. We can't go with 2 new guards, 2 new tackles. So a choice would have to be made here on which one would actually have to leave. First up is Morgan Moses, the right tackle. Coming into the last year of his 3-year deal, cutting him would save $5.5 million. And that would be more than half of the savings we need to get out of this $9.5 million hole. But Moses has been a steady contributor to the team. Could we do better? We possibly could, but it's going to cost some money. Replacing him with Faalele, replacing him with Salah, whomever, we just don't have that guy on the roster right now. So is the money worth the risk? And this brings us to our biggest conundrum, Ronnie Stanley. What did we do with Ronnie Stanley? Ronnie Stanley was signed to a $100+ million extension, and ever since then he has predominantly been hurt. He has worked his way back. You can clearly tell he is not the Ronnie Stanley of old, and people say he needs a little bit more time to heal up to get back to his prior form. How many seasons do you need? We can't wait around season after season for you to return to possibly the Pro Bowl All-Pro form that you once had in 2019. Now, the Ravens could go back and restructure Stanley's contract once again for a 3rd time, but again, you're pushing money down the line, and you may have to eventually cut him and get that dead money hit anyway. But cutting Ronnie Stanley post June 1st would save the team $15 million. But in retrospect, it would leave a big hole on the Ravens offensive line. The Ravens have no suitors, no replacements, no one in line that can start at left tackle and replace Ronnie Stanley's production, no matter how diminished it is. I know they say this is an offensive tackle-rich draft. Do we really trust a rookie coming in here protecting Lamar's blind side? I do believe that they need to draft Ronnie Stanley's replacement just in case, even if they decide to keep him around, because we can kind of see where this story is going with Ronnie Stanley. He will not be a Raven for too much longer. And last but not least, Marlon Humphrey. Once again, they could go in and restructure Humphrey's contract for a 3rd time, or they could just cut him outright, being that he has not really been that healthy these past few seasons. After signing that $98 million contract, I don't think that Humphrey has lived up to the billing. And even without him last season, Ravens did not give up a 300-yard passer, meaning quite possibly they could survive without him. But cutting Marlowe outright would give the Ravens $11 million in cap relief. But once again, it leaves a hole in the secondary. Brandon Stephens played darn good last season. Is he ready to take over that #1 cornerback role if they let him go? And then who do we slide in at #2? The Ravens have spent a lot of draft capital bringing in cornerbacks that just have not panned out. So the risk of letting Marlowe go, you kind of have to weigh the two options. But all in all, the Ravens have a lot of big decisions coming up this offseason to get under the salary cap, to build a cushion to sign free agents, and to have a little money put aside just in case players get injured and we have to bring in season replacements. All in all, with the moves that I just mentioned, which is highly unlikely, but if they were to happen, it would save the Ravens $42.2 million in cap space. And with the money we are over the cap with, that would leave the Ravens with $32.7 million cap room to go sign other free agents to bring in those replacements. So while bringing Madubuike back seems to be a good move, it has created other holes on this Ravens roster. So what do the Ravens do? It's hard to tell. Once again, we have less than a week, Wednesday, March 13th, to figure out what the Ravens are going to do and how this roster is pretty much going to be constructed for the 2024 season. Hopefully, Eric Costa makes the right moves. All in all, the best outcome would be to sign Madubuike to an extension before next week. That way, that whole $22 million does not hit that cap immediately, and the Ravens can make further moves. So, EDC, the ball is in your court. Appreciate you for hanging out with me. Make sure to like and subscribe, hit that notification bell so you are aware when I come out with more content. Until next time, it's your boy.